Welcome back to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. Today, I am super excited to have with me a real talent and asset to the insurance community, the founder of Adjunct Advisors, a writer of Monday Musings with Meg, host of Bound and Determined podcast, Meg Mckeen. Welcome to the show.
Brad, so fun to be here with you. Thank you. And thanks for repeating back some of the neat stuff that I've got going on right now. It's kind of fun to hear it cataloged in that way. So thank
Yeah, I
you.
didn't even mention speaker, which I know you do a little bit of that too. So I
Mhm.
am super excited to chop it up with you today and learn more about you and your journey on your 5-year anniversary of Adjunct Advisors. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your background, your entry into the insurance space, and bring us up to today?
Perfect. I can do that. And I'll try to do it succinctly and clearly and not take our whole time together. What I won't do is diminish the time that I have. I started in the business when I was 21 as an intern in college. One of the things I hear a lot of us do when we reach a certain point in our career is talk about how we started in kindergarten. And the truth is, I've been here for a while, almost 25
Mm,
years. I'm proud of that. I've covered a lot of ground. I think we should be celebrating the experience, not
yeah.
diminishing it. But I did start as an intern. I was doing telemarketing, vowed to never sell
Mm,
insurance. It was a terrible, terrible experience and very out of alignment for me, but did get me licensed. And so I did start. My first job out of college was with the carrier in their underwriting training program out in Ohio, and set me up really with a great foundation of knowledge and understanding for the science of underwriting. And moved around a fair amount, made some changes in my personal life, got married, got divorced in that time. Ended up working for a handful of different insurance companies of various sizes, both in headquarters, underwriting roles, and then in the field as well. And then in underwriting leadership. And then the phone rang, which it sometimes does. And I highly encourage all of us to take the call when it does. And it was a former agent that I had worked with back in my field underwriting days, and had an opportunity to go to the agency side of the
mm,
business and got licensed, re-licensed because I'd let my license go after that internship, and really had a chance to see the art of our business, of sort of how deals are made and how the rubber meets the road, if you will, and really enjoyed the energy on the agency side, but still was feeling, I've said the word a million times, misaligned.
mm,
And to be frank, my career in insurance was very misaligned. I'm a feelings, thought,
mm.
emotion person, and felt myself plugged into these positions that were much more numbers, data, math focused. And I live in the squishy, messy part of life and business. And so really struggled, frankly. And I talk about that pretty openly, to find my place, and not the place where I fit, but the place that fit me. And I
Yeah.
think that's a strong distinction. And so 6 years ago, almost to the day, I left my last, I'll say, traditional corporate role. And I took a year off, which I'm very fortunate and privileged to have been able to do. Anybody who's been working in the industry for a while knows that there can be a strong financial upside to sticking around and doing your time, if you will. And so I like to say I took a year of retirement in the middle of my career, but really started to daydream about what the future could hold for me, and thought seriously about leaving the industry altogether, and then decided that maybe instead I could be part of change. And that's such a big,
Mm.
grandiose thing to say, but that's really what I'm doing today as a project based consultant in the industry. I've got my hands in a lot of different things, but all of them represent a new and different way of looking at and thinking about the work we do as people, as humans.
So during that time off, is that kind of where you came up with that the concept of a value-based insurance consulting firm?
Nope. Nope. Because nobody was talking that way
Yeah.
then. I knew that my values were misaligned, but I didn't feel confident that I could use language like that and still make a living. And so the business I
Mm,
started, I mean, I have to laugh about it because we all start somewhere, was a version of what I had seen other people do with my own flavor, if you
Yeah.
will. And so I felt like I needed to do one thing, and I did. I started out doing sales coaching. Actually, I built this beautiful, intensive new producer training program, and I launched it, and nobody bought it. And it was a whole lesson on if you build it, they won't necessarily come. And there's so many little lessons baked into just that experience. But really understanding that part of the beauty, if you can learn to trust yourself as an entrepreneur, is that the business you start doesn't necessarily have to be the business that you eventually
Yeah.
run or retire
Yes.
from. And can you stay nimble? Yeah, market research, listening to your competitors and what's going on around you is important, but the values piece came when I did the internal work, and I decided I wanted to be the CEO of a business that I wanted to work in, not necessarily that I wanted to scale and sell. I want
Yeah.
to be proud of the work I do. I want to be proud to align with the organizations and the clients that I do. It's hard. And we can talk about
Yeah.
that because that's a
Yeah.
whole other side of this. It didn't happen overnight.
No.
But the values piece is it's real. It's very much a driver of decision making for me day to day.
Talk about your when we talked a few weeks ago and you touched on your um when you were selling before and you felt like that wasn't you and that you weren't maybe necessarily being true to yourself and you felt and learned that if you were being probably more true to yourself you would have had a little bit more success. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So first things first, success is relative, and
Yeah.
I am here to unravel because I think this needs to be said generationally that financial success isn't necessarily the motivator for a lot of people coming into the business today. So they need to see meaning and purpose and value in the work that they're doing, and we cannot speak loudly enough about what a career in insurance sales provides in that realm. Yes, there can be a huge financial upside. The first part of your question about what was the first part of your question?
Well, I was just trying to reflect on our conversation, and
Yeah.
I know that you had, like you said, when you were coming up and you didn't like the sales process. It
Yeah.
was maybe a little too robotic. It was data
Yes.
driven. And you refer to yourself as being squishy and more
Yeah.
feelings. And if you could have introduced your feelings to it, you could have connected with more people.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for refreshing my fading memory there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've sat through a lot of us have a lot of very traditional insurance sales training programs, and it's there are nuggets of gold in each one of them, and I always left the room feeling like there was still something missing. And what I learned after selling myself, being an agent myself, was the secret sauce was me.
Yeah.
And that the more awareness I had around myself and how I'm showing up and the words that I'm using and the energy that I'm projecting, that's the difference. And you can't five-step that to 10x your business overnight. That has to come from deep, deep self-awareness and an understanding of who you are in the space that you're taking up. And so that is how I sold when I was an active producer. I had a niche, but my niche wasn't schools or contractors or nonprofits. It was specifically working with other women who were buying business insurance for the first time.
Mm.
Why? Because I understood the energy that they were in as an overwhelmed business owner, that they were expected to be experts at all sorts of things they didn't know anything else about. Why? Because I was that person. I was figuring it out as I went as well. And so, one of the things that when I'm working with producers now, because I still do sales coaching, that is still part of the business that I run today, is really helping them identify energetically where are you meeting your clients, where's the overlap. So sure, you might know a lot about construction, you might know a lot about healthcare. Do you care about those things? What about working with a first time CFO who's completely overwhelmed and who has never made an insurance buying decision before? What if you started
Yeah.
talking to that person? Because
Yeah.
healthcare is an industry, right? Healthcare is
Yeah.
not a person. A frustrated, overwhelmed CFO, that's a person. And when you reach that person, they're going to know that you're for them.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful distinction. And I would leave these training environments thinking, ugh, we're just not getting it. There's a reason people hate us, and there's a reason nobody wants to take our calls. And like, we've done this to
Yeah.
ourselves. And the flip side of that is we spend a lot of time, and this is true in life, right? Not just in business, but in relationships, trying to be what we're not.
Yeah. Right.
So when you're
Yeah.
young and you're starting out, and young in tenure, not necessarily age, but starting out in the insurance business, you don't know anything about insurance. And so what do? You try to compensate for all the things you don't know, and you talk over your clients, and you try to answer questions they haven't even asked. And we're so in our own way that spending that time and energy really leveraging what you already are, which is a good listener,
Yeah.
highly empathetic, a good relator of people, good in a crisis. Go be those things. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be a strong insurance technician. I wish we were all better insurance technicians
Right.
for the responsibility, right, that we have for the work that we do. But we spend so much time on these extrinsic factors and not nearly enough time really checking in with ourselves and understanding what makes us different and unique, and then leveraging that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about um, your journey of the first 5 years of your business, and maybe what really kind of caught my eye to Meg Mckeen was your post that you had written for making it 5 years. Very cleverly written post. Um, Something that definitely resonated with me, and and then bring us up to today, the nerve-wracking experience of starting this journey and what it's been like since then.
Yeah, so 5 years and 30 seconds or less, right? Let's see, let's see. It's been everything. It's
Yeah.
been, this business is my proudest accomplishment. It's the scariest thing, it's the riskiest thing, it's the hardest thing, it's the most joyful thing. All of that can be true. And I think understanding that there's only so much prescription that we can have, and so many guarantees that we can have before we
Mhm.
have to look inward and trust ourselves just enough to take the step and figure it out. That said, I have interviewed for a lot of jobs in the last 5 years. I've quit my job, my own company, more than once in the last 5 years. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but where it's like Thursday afternoon and the money's not coming in, and the contracts aren't getting signed, and the social media posts are falling flat, and nobody's returning my calls. And I'm thinking, I can't do this anymore. And you give
Yeah.
yourself Friday to recalibrate and recoup, and then you start again. And I think anyone that is telling anyone that there is such a thing as an overnight sensation, or that there is that 5-step system that's going to make it all easy and take away your pain, I just don't buy it. And I'm living proof of that. And the one, I mean, there's a million things that have helped me to get to the other side of it, right? Then
Mhm.
you throw in a global pandemic. Could we just, comment on that for a second? Like, didn't see that coming.
Right.
So like, to have a viable business at the end of the pandemic became my goal, which, fortunately I'm here, and feel so much loss and heartache for those who are not. But that was, I mean, I'll never understand fully the impact of the pandemic on my business, but
Yeah.
the sense of community, and really finding people who understood me and what I was about and what I was trying to accomplish, that could support me and encourage me and be my cheerleaders and my number one fans. Being a solopreneur is very isolating. We
Yeah.
are on an island, and the other piece of it, kind of the gnarly piece, is competition. Like, not a lot of people are willing to pop their hoods on their own business and say, this is how I did it. And I
Yeah.
want to encourage you and support you to do the same. And so I've been fortunate to be part of, and also to have built a really strong community around me, that has turned into, it's my livelihood, right? Like, these are now they're people who are able to refer me in for opportunities and vice versa. And that's a really neat inflection point too.
Was there a point where you said, or where you were maybe able to start to be able to tell yourself, like, you know what, I think I'm going to be okay?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been 5 years. I would say about year 4
Mm,
is when I really started to trust that this wasn't a fledgling, scrappy startup, but this was actually a viable business that could not just support me, but that I could really achieve some of my longer term, bigger picture goals. Now, show me a business book, and this is true for producers as well, not just
yeah.
entrepreneurs, but 6 months, 18 months, 3 months, or I'm sorry, 3 years is what we tell people. This is what it takes. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, no, no, no. For me to really have that sense of confidence and security. And what is secure? Like, what does that even mean? It could all change
Yeah.
tomorrow, but
Yeah.
it really wasn't until year 4. The other thing I started doing in year 4, and I know you had Carrie Wallace was on a past episode of yours,
Mhm.
and she talked about knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
That was a bit, I started to run my business like a CEO. I
Yeah.
started to make choices
Mm,
about the money coming in and the money going out. How is this adding to my bottom line? What's the ROI? And then I am not a numbers math person. I've already shared that with you.
yeah.
Forcing myself, because it was forcing myself to sit down with my financials, to look at my P&L every month,
Hmm.
to be okay with the uncertainty, and to really build my own financial um, education and knowledge and awareness as a business owner. That was a huge pivot point for me.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the offerings that you provide, because they're pretty vast.
They're very
Yeah.
vast,
Yeah.
and this is the part where I'm supposed to give you my, my elevator pitch, and
Yeah.
I can't because it changes all the time, and
Okay.
when I talk about building a business that I want, to work in, this is why, because I love the variety, and I love that I get to flex different muscles within myself and also build new skills as we go. So we're coming into the fall. A lot of what I'm doing right now is in the event and conference space. So I do a lot of speaking. One of the things that I'm starting to do more of, which is really cool, is focused on supporting and elevating women in the event and the conference space. So whether that's emceeing or building events from scratch, doing a panel moderation, that's work that's really near and dear to my heart. Plus, I get to help other women on their way get on stage, which is a really cool moment for me to be part of that.
How difficult is that? Because I'd imagine there's a lot of reluctance to get on stage. I don't care
No,
who you are. No.
I disagree. I respectfully disagree. There are a
Okay.
lot of women that have a lot to say, and
Well, I know that.
what I don't see are
Opportunity.
avenues or vehicles to get them there. So if you look at a lot of the conferences in our industry, the vast majority of speakers continue to identify as male,
Mm,
to not be diverse in any category. And part of what I'm doing is lovingly reminding the industry that there's more going on, and that,
okay.
highlighting, like, for example, I'm going to be in South Dakota this fall, and we're doing a panel discussion featuring several women in the state of South Dakota working in the industry. And so it's a really cool, like, the people are already there. And many of these women have never spoken on stage before,
Yeah.
but they're going to do great. And part of it is we're not asking them to go up and do an hour-long keynote. We're asking them to come up on the stage, and I say that with air quotes, and tell stories.
Mm,
And, like, we're good at that. As women in particular, we're really good at creating connection quickly. And so they're going to do great. So no, this isn't that far of a reach, to be
okay.
honest. There's a lot of women who reach out to me because I am a professional public speaker, and they'll ask me, how did you do it? How do I get on stage? And I think the real key is, how do we get on stage and how do we get paid? And that's something
Mm,
that's become a very personal passion of mine, that not true for women, but true for people in general, is we do a lot of giving away of our expertise for free when there's a lot of value that's created through it. And aligning the resources with the knowledge. Who's going to go to a conference or a convention with no speakers? Right? That's like
yeah.
going to a concert
Yeah.
without the opening
Right.
act or the main
Right.
act, right?
Right.
Like, who's going to do that? It's not, You're not going to these conferences for the food, maybe,
Right.
but,
No,
that's
no,
yeah,
definitely
and
not.
so the conferences are built around good,
Correct.
solid speakers, and
Yeah.
yet they're often the last to get paid. So
Yeah, that's
that's,
the value.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of times the speaker lineup is the value. I mean, I'll look at that and see what I want to hear, see what topics I'm interested in,
yeah.
that sort of thing. Um, so let's say that I hire you for some executive coaching,
Yep.
which I could probably use. What, tell me what your process looks, to come into, my office and start to help me and make me better.
Yeah, I love it. And thanks for asking. Like, thanks for asking these questions in a way that lets me highlight what I do in a non-salesy, inauthentic way. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So, the executive coaching I do is across all disciplines in insurance, but it is in insurance. So whether you're leading an insurtech or an agency sales team or carrier underwriting team, it's kind of the same. And there isn't a formula in the sense that I'm telling you what you need to do and you are going to do that. You are bringing to me the challenges that you have on a daily, monthly, weekly basis, and we're figuring out ways to help you move the needle in that area. I have to add this disclaimer all the time. I'm not a therapist. I wish I was. Had my career gone in a different direction, I would have all the credentials to talk about wounds and triggers from childhood, but I cannot do that. I do know that line, but our sessions often can feel that way because the salesperson or an executive team or executive leader who comes to me and says, I can't get my team to grow, usually doesn't have anything to do with selling more insurance. It has to do with something that's
Yeah.
going on internally within that
Yes.
executive. And so a lot of my job is to be that mirror for the person on the other end of the Zoom, because all of this is virtual, to help them see themselves in a way that they're not able to right now and to clear some of those blocks. And the other piece of it, which is really where the proverbial rubber meets the road, is the accountability piece. So we end each session with a small goal and something that you're working towards. And then when we meet the next time, we check in. How did that go? I don't care if you do it or not. Like, there's nothing in it for me.
Right.
If you say you're going to do X and you don't do X, my life is going to go on. But you're ultimately going to be the one that suffers for not taking action. And so sometimes just having that extra person that you're accountable to other than yourself will do an interesting thing motivationally to keep us going.
Yeah, well, if you're not coachable, you're most likely not gonna improve in much of anything.
Yeah. And if
Y
you're coachable, I don't want to work for you. Like, that's where we are as an industry right now. There are a lot of, and I say it with affection because, like, we need them all, but maybe we don't need this kind. I don't know. There's a lot of people who have their heads down and really haven't done that deep reflection that we've talked about. And maybe it's not personal reflection, but maybe it's how they want to be as a leader. How do you want to show up as a person, as a human, as a guide, as a culture effector, as a culture developer? There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And a lot of people are heads down, holding on tightly to the way it's always been. And the generation, again, coming in, if you are lacking self-awareness, if you don't understand empathy, if you are not being vulnerable, if you are a mouthpiece and you're not telling the whole story, they won't stick around for it.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people that would like to retire. And in order to be able to do that, we need to have that next generation come in and really embrace what a career in insurance looks like.
yeah. Um, on that, I'm gonna kinda move into and hopefully I can phrase this the right way so it makes sense for you and anybody listening. Something I've struggled with, and what you talk a lot about, being yourself, being squishy, it's okay, and you just mentioned it there, said a good word, vulnerable.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like, when I took over as leader, so I've owned this agency since 2011, and and I was definitely too driven, too hyper focused on production, growing, all that. I did not do a very good job identifying with my people.
Hmm.
And 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 I don't think, in relating it to a discussion from the past, I definitely didn't bring myself in to the leadership role. And I still find that as a fine line, because I just always felt like there still needs to be a hierarchy. Like, I want to be close. I don't think I can be, one of the gals, and what, I mean, to really be in there. So, how do we balance that? Let's be togetherness. Let's show some empathy, but still hold that line of, I'm still, the leader, and I don't like the word boss. I don't, but I mean, can you touch on that at all, or
Yeah.
you have, yeah.
Yeah. I love the question. And thank you for your vulnerability. Because that's a risk, right? For you to admit that back then you didn't know what you were doing entirely and you didn't have it figured out. And I think that's a huge lesson in itself, that it's okay to say that you don't know and you don't have all the answers.
Oh, that's what this podcast is all about. I've
Yeah.
made so many mistakes, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and until I started to, and I won't go too far down that, but until I started to work on myself, which a little ashamed to admit how long it took me to really start to try and develop myself as a leader, and as a better business owner. And you just talked about P&L. I didn't look at a P&L for 5 years. That's all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so let's, get back to that question of, of connecting to your group, but yet still holding that, line, and not crossing that line and going too far, because we like to talk about culture and we're a family,
Mm.
and that's great. Like, yeah. So if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is gonna be like a master class in, 3
Yes.
minutes or less here, because there's so many layers to this,
Yeah.
and we're gonna miss a little bit of context, but in general, really thinking about hierarchy, people need leadership,
Yeah.
right? We need people that have vision. We need people that can execute. Not everybody's made for that. And really understanding who that is in your organization. And then the second piece is, I believe, and I have seen this when I've worked for leaders who lead this way, and I've seen the opposite when they don't. But I firmly believe that the role of a leader is to clear the path of obstacles to success for their team. So it's not necessarily to stand at the top of the hierarchy with a hammer and
Yeah.
keep, right? That just doesn't, we've worked
No.
for those people. We see that energy. We repel that energy in most
Yeah.
cases. But can a leader look at the day to day, look at the minutia? Can they start to make decisions about how best can I use the authority and the influence that I have to clear the path to success for my people? Technology is a great way that we can do this today. If you don't know that it takes 7,000 clicks and 42 hours for an account manager on your team to get a certain task done, if they're telling you, listen, and if you don't believe them, sit with them next time they're doing that task and see for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's that you then can use that knowledge and the authority that you have in order to make change, which is ultimately what a leader is empowered to do with that leadership title. The part about, again, to the squishy part, I don't want my boss to be my best friend.
Yeah.
I had a very unfortunate experience many women have and people have in our industry where I was sexually harassed
Mm.
on the job. If you're sexually harassed and your boss is your friend, where is the hierarchy? Where is the support? What if it's your boss that did it? There is this
Yeah.
blurring of lines that we need to protect these relationships. Our coworkers are not our family. I don't like the idea of our workplace being familial, because my family doesn't fire me. My family's not going to lay me off. My family's not going to deny me a pay increase because they
Yeah.
chose to spend. You see what I'm saying? There's a
Yes.
strong
Yes.
distinction. I get the energy around it, right? I have your back. I trust you. I care about you. There are all sorts of ways that we can express that. in terms of some monetary things, right? Time off, supporting volunteerism, celebrations. There's a lot of ways that we can bring that energy into the workplace, but I do believe there needs to be a clear line between what is a familial relationship and what is a business relationship. It gets really tricky when your family is your business.
Oh,
And that's like a whole other episode,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think that's a lot of agency owners struggle with. So yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, what are some common trends that you've been noticing in the industry over the last 3 years, both with either with producers or with with executives? What have you seen?
Yeah. So, 3 years again puts us back in the pandemic,
Yeah,
which was a total game changer. And I know it's a relative, time frame, but that really was a pivot point, I
yeah.
think, for us as an industry in a lot of ways. We're still talking about hybrid, remote, return to the office. There's more conversations being had right now. A lot of on the carrier side, a lot of carriers are sending people back to the office, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out in the long run. Personally, I have passion and interest around producer compensation
Mm.
and what do those individual producer agreements look like in terms of non-competes and book ownership. Um, I have very strong feelings about it. Again, I keep talking about this generation that's coming in. I just don't think they're going to sign a contract that ties them to an employer for the rest of their career.
Oh no.
Just don't think they're going to do it.
Well, non-competes are essentially going away altogether. So
Yes, they are, but I think the energy around them in this sense that the producer is beholden to the agency, we got to work on that. Because whether the paper's there or not, there still is a perception that if you are a producer for an agency, they own you in a certain sense.
yeah,
And I think a lot more people will be moving truly independent. And then how do we respond to that as an industry? The other thing, gig working, part-time producing. I did it for a long time. When I was starting my business, I had my insurance producing was a side hustle while I was building my insurance practice, my consulting practice. I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of the calls. We were joking before we started recording. I get a lot of questions about my gray hair. I also get a lot of questions about starting my business where people are in traditional corporate roles and they want to do something else. And so, how can we figure out a way to keep these people in the industry and engaged in the industry, but not necessarily in traditional 9 to 5 single W-2 employment situations? And I represent a small but growing swath of people that have skills and capabilities to do a lot of different things that don't fit in that traditional W-2 bucket.
yeah. In our initial call, you brought up something which was quite surprising to me about our industry and something that you're seeing, and that a lot of producers and maybe some producers, we didn't discuss any names, anything like that.
Mm.
Maybe some producers that I would be probably surprised at that want out, and that agents want out. I am seeing some, agency owners which are putting it out there. They've just said, I had enough. Can you touch on that feeling that you're seeing? And maybe it's a little more consistent than what I'm aware of.
Yeah. There thousands of people are licensed to sell insurance, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
motivated differently and I don't know them all. I don't want to know them all, frankly.
Yeah.
But again, because of the work I do, because I am a speaker of truth, because I'm a holder of space, people come to me
Yeah.
and they often come to me with the things they don't want to say to their colleague or their boss or even their spouse or partner because they don't get it or you can't say it. And so a lot of the people, and this is slightly anecdotal, but more than enough to tell me this isn't a one off. This isn't someone having a bad day.
Yeah.
So these are people who I would say have reached very traditional success as a salesperson, as a producer in our industry. They've got the book of business. It's, the renewals are churning. They're adding new business by referral. They aren't actually working very hard in terms of sustaining the business. So they did their
Yeah.
time and now it's starting to pay off. And you know these people. They're also not 65. They're like
Yeah.
45. So they started grinding, and I
Super
hate that
young.
word. They started grinding. Yeah. They started grinding when they were 21, and it was really
Yeah.
hard and it was really frustrating. And it didn't take 3 years, it took 5. But then by year 10, they were like, all right. So from year 10 to year 20, they rode the wave, right? This is great. I joined the country club. I'm going on trips. I got my second home. I'm buying a car. My kids' college is paid for. Like whatever the motivator is, they were able to achieve that. Well, now they're 45. They're not ready to retire. They want to do something different. But in selling insurance doesn't offer them the challenge or the opportunity because it's no longer about the money. And that's been a really interesting distinction. We
Mm.
talked about this a little bit earlier, is that the money only gets you so far. Then you enter the misalignment that I felt. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Like, what is the career path for an insurance salesperson? It's to sell as much insurance as you can and make as much money as you want. But then if you say, well, the average person's going to have 15 different jobs in 6 different industries in their career, how do you make that make sense?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I think that was around the time that we also discussed that um, maybe people are more apt, or men are more apt to talk to someone like yourself about this. Is that because, in your view, is that because we are bad listeners? We give bad advice. We're too masculine. What do you think that is? Because I have a hunch that you have a lot of these types of conversations.
I do. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't talk about the easy stuff. People don't come to me, and we don't get there overnight. That's the other piece, is you can come to me with your cards held really close and you can want to talk about, I need to sell more insurance, or I need to be a better manager. Whatever the problem is as you identify it, we can always start there. It's your willingness, like you said about being coachable, it's your willingness to trust me and trust yourself that we can peel back the layers and figure out what's really going on. But this is interesting, and we had such a good conversation around this the first
Yeah.
time we talked. I wish we could have recorded it. I'll try to
I know.
recreate a little bit of the magic, but in my personal life, just to, again,
Yes.
full exposure, full disclosure, I'm dating. So I was married and divorced and have
Yeah.
been single for a long time, and part of my research that I'm doing now as a middle-aged woman dating is I'm listening to a lot of content and reading and absorbing a lot of content for men, by men, really trying to understand, I can walk into a room and I can sit over a cup of coffee with my girlfriends, and I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. I know what the expectations are. Men have a very different experience in our society and our culture. And so I want to educate myself, and hopefully, create some new understanding around the messaging that they're receiving. And one of the things that, very stereotypically, but I see this play out over and over again, is men have buddies, right? And they're the guys that you watch the game with on Sunday and you meet for happy hour, and maybe you stand on the sidelines while your kids are playing sports, and they're like your buddies, they're your bros, right? And these are your friends. And the conversations are usually, and again, stereotyping here, but kind of surface level. Hey, did you watch the game? Hey, how are you doing at work? Oh, I'm busy. Never, how are you feeling? You look really
Yeah.
troubled today, Brad. Is something going on? I know you had a fight with your wife last week. Are you guys okay? Were you able to resolve that? And like, women do that. And again, that's just I don't know why. Physiologically, there's probably a reason why, but I can sit down with a woman I don't even know, and within 30 seconds, we can get to feelings and emotions and thoughts. The interesting thing is, as women do that more outwardly, a lot of men, not every man, a lot of men kind of say, I want that too. Like, I'm more than just my buddies having beers on a Sunday afternoon. I got some stuff going on, some feelings in my belly, some misalignment, some stress that I don't like. I want to make some different choices, but I don't know how. And that's what sends them to my door. Why? Because of exactly what you saw on social media. They know I get it.
Yeah.
And often they don't have these circles, and the word is community, right? A lot of men don't have a sense of community, even though they have friends, even though they're part of networks and they go to these social events and things. They don't have a strong network of men who see them and get them and value them at a human cellular level.
Yeah.
What do I know? All I can say is like, that's who shows up at my door, right?
Yeah.
May not be true for everybody listening, but I do think when we think about bringing this back to business, I don't want to do business with the smartest or the most aggressive or the loudest insurance agent. I want to do business with the insurance agent that sees me and values me and understands me for who I am.
Yeah.
And that is such a different distinction and something we miss over and over and over
Yeah.
again. Who has to do the work? The producer. That's you
Yeah.
got like you gotta be here for it, and you have to be willing to go inward.
Yeah. I feel like we've seen a lot of advancements, in that way of um, of communicating, getting to know people, developing a relationship, hearing where they're coming from, at least the good ones. Because if you really want to, um, protect someone the best that they can, you have to know about them, what they have.
Yeah.
Circling back to um, some men, I'm very fortunate to have a really, really solid, close knit group of friends that, two of them, one I've met in kindergarten, the other in first grade, and we're very tight. But we can get squishy. We've gone through a lot of things together. But to your point, we don't often do, we don't often do that. And I think a lot of it is we have to find the timing, you
Hmm.
know. Um, speaking for myself, I don't want to put my burdens on someone else. So I'll just suck it in,
Yeah.
unless it's something I really need to. But I do know that if I want to talk about something, I do have a support network to do that. I think most men, they're just, I don't know. I don't know. We're weird. So,
Hey, your word's not mine, but in terms of, I'm going to push back a little bit. This is the coach in me coming
yes,
out. When you
do
talk
it.
about not wanting to put your burdens on someone else,
Yeah,
does
that's
that
my,
mean if does that mean then that if someone chooses to share their burdens with you, you would say no,
no way. No
right?
way. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But that's what I mean, where it's just kind of goofy, and that's my own internal, piece of it of, nah, I mean, I don't want to dump my stuff, but that's my
Yeah.
own goofiness. Um, and I think we have to ask, with one of my friends, they're not going to probably come right out and 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 um talk about something, maybe talk about something that's going on at home. Um, and it is easier to talk about our children, and that, this, well, we don't know what he's going to do. He hasn't graduated, or he's graduated and now he's doing nothing. One day he wants to be a plumber, next day he wants to go to community college. That's
Yeah.
still not very deep. But
Yeah.
but I think we need to ask each other, and then I think men are more willing to share if they're asked, because probably they
Mhm.
want to talk about it, but they're not going to initiate it. Is probably my sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
So
then can you be that soft place to receive it when they're ready? And like that is super squishy language that most men are like, what? I'm like, you soft place, like, nah. But that's the difference, right? Like the reason, I've been a coach my whole life, not by title, not by vocation, but I've
yeah,
always been the one that people leave their worries and their troubles with. That's who I am. I've always been that person. I will always be that person. So the fact that I've been able to package it up and bundle it up and monetize it
mm,
is, I mean, best case scenario for me because it's not a struggle. It comes easily, but that's not true for everyone. But yet I see so many people, and we're talking about men in general, who are part of my network and part of my world who have an amazing gift for communication and connection.
Yeah.
And so there, I have a lot of feelings about this.
That's great. Keep going.
It works both ways,
Yeah.
right? So it's a bit of an, if you are that person, right? If you're willing to receive that, whatever the weight of that situation is, can you make the uncomfortable, awkward first step? Can
Oh,
you make, right? And like,
yeah.
what would happen then if we did, instead of kind of sitting on the sidelines with our arms folded, talking about everybody else, not gossiping, but when you talk about your kids and you talk about work, you're not focusing, there's no energy going to you as a human, when ultimately I think that's what a lot of people need right now
Yeah.
in this greater context of mental health and burnout. And this is not, I talk a lot about burnout. I experienced burnout as a woman in the industry. This is not a woman thing. Back to the producers who are outwardly successful wanting to make total career pivots.
Yeah.
That's burnout. That's what that is. And so I do think there's an opportunity to create spaces where the conversation is different and it sounds different and the outcomes are different. And
Yeah.
maybe it's weird, maybe it's goofy, but I'm seeing it. One of the best things I think we can do as an industry when we're trying to solve the problems in insurance is to look outside the industry. That's been true for me.
Mm.
So much of the learning just now that I'm doing about dating and relationships is absolutely coming back into my business. And
Mm.
like, get ready for it, Brad. You seem to like my writing, but a lot of the things I'm learning about just the human experience are 1,000% relatable to the way we sell insurance and the way we navigate careers here. But nobody's making that connection. And so, I'm going to have some fun with it. And I think that's where we are, is people, a lot of those lines are more blurry. And for some people, it comes more naturally.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see more and more of that and hopefully, in a sense, normalize it. Just thinking, I'm a sociologist at heart, thinking about gender roles, thinking about sort of the stereotypical role that men and women play in society. And, men being the breadwinner, the hunter, the protector, the nurturer, and women being these sort of submissive,
Mm.
internal, heads down, like, again, terrible, terrible stereotypes. I am the hunter and the gatherer
Yeah.
and right? Like, the
Get it.
world looks different, right? People are
Yeah.
showing up differently. And so
Yes.
I think one of the last pieces to catch up is, how do we relate to each other? I don't need a man to support me at this
Yeah.
stage of my life. 50 years ago, I might have. That
Yeah.
might have been my number one, is, do you have a good job and can you support me? Now it's, can you support me emotionally?
Mm.
And like, oof, that's sending some packing, because like, that's a big ask for a lot of people.
Mm.
But I didn't think we were going to go down the Meg's dating
No, I
story.
took it there. Oh, I got one comment to add on that.
Yeah.
I hope that what you find, and I do believe this, the dating in your 40s, I do think that men start to soften, and maybe I like to think that we maybe get a little bit better,
Yeah,
with some of our age. So I hope that that's your experience.
it is. I'm
But
having so much fun.
oh, good.
I honestly am. And I'm I'm here for it. It's been great. I've had someday I'll write a book and this will be a whole chapter, and I won't name names, but it's been really validating and really supportive, and not what I thought it would be, in a good way.
Before we get this thing wrapped up, let's bring it back to your business
Yeah.
and tell me a little bit about what you envisioned and what it looks like now and how you've had to adapt along the way.
Oh my goodness. I've been programmed from youth to think in 10-year increments.
Mm.
So always thinking so
Wow.
far out into the future. Yep. And that's a whole other episode. But that was the biggest thing for me, was rewiring that thinking, that when I started my business, I needed to be attached to every outcome, and that the business I started in July of 2018 needed to look the same and function the same and be the same, and really giving myself space to figure it out as I went. And that's certainly been the case then. It still is. today. There's stuff I'm working on that has the potential to send me like in a whole other direction. And I'm not sure that I'm ready for that, but it is the beauty that comes with doing the work that I do and the way that I do it is it does open up a lot of different opportunities. The path, like the
Well, I just,
messy, like
yeah,
it's messy. Really? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
It is for all of us though, right?
yeah,
I mean, I had an idea when I took over and I had this entrepreneurial spirit, and then to get everybody rowing in the same direction, it was a mess. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I sure thought I thought I had a better idea, but I didn't.
yeah,
So I think we all learn along the way. But
yeah,
I'm so glad that you kind of made it over that hump and stayed into it and are comfortable, I hope, with where you're at.
oh yeah.
Um,
Life is good, business is good. And interestingly, maybe the biggest change, and this is what I shared on LinkedIn that I think resonated with you. The business looks different, the logo's different, and the colors are different, and the all that's different, but it's me. Like
yeah,
I have evolved the most as a leader, as a visionary, as a woman on her way. When I look at my beliefs about myself 5 years ago and what I thought I was capable of, and that's where the growth has been. And that's why the business has grown, right? Because I haven't resisted that. I've really leaned into it. And the business is more an expression of who I am today than it
yeah,
was 5 years ago. And I say all the time, like, this is not the business I'll retire from. I've got a long way to go, and I'm open to the twists and turns. And I do think in the beginning I was so married to the outcome that I got in my own way often. And now I have the energy around the business is much easier. The business is not easy, but the way I'm going about it is with ease. And I think that's a different distinction.
mm. Correct me if I'm wrong, and we are up against the clock here,
Yep.
but this is what I found. I've known you for about an hour and a half now. So
We're old friends now, Brad.
I in reading some of your writings, I feel like you found yourself.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Would
Yeah.
you say?
I think I got reacquainted with myself. I was always
Yeah,
here. And
yeah,
I would challenge anyone who's listening. There's a lot of pressure to be what you're not and to improve your weakness and to find the low point and build that up. I think you're pretty great as you are. And there's certain fundamental intrinsic things about each of us that make us different and unique. And go exploit the heck out of that. And so I've always been this person. I didn't trust myself
mm,
to be this person.
yes,
Um, but she was always in there.
yeah.
And that's beautiful. Wow, Brad, way to get squishy with me.
Well, to
That's
me,
really
and
neat.
now you're saying this is who I am. I mean, this is with your writings, and
Yeah.
that's what's resonated so much with me. And there's a confidence, and it's I think it's wonderful to see. Um, if someone wants to get in touch with you, wants to connect with you, wants to work with you, what's the best
Yeah.
way to get in touch with Meg?
Best way, find me on LinkedIn. I'm very, very active over
Mhm.
there. And also head over to the website, adjunctadvisors.com. And advisors has an OR at
Yep.
the end, not an ER.
And I
So
will
yeah,
leave.
and all sorts of contact forms. And, I'm not hard to find. I'm very Googleable. If you Google Meg Insurance, you'll get me,
Mm,
which is
that's
like,
impressive.
yeah, my mom told me that the other day.
Thank you very much for joining me today and sharing so much. I enjoyed it. Again, as I do, I think I'll enjoy every one of our conversations. But everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. And we'll see you next week.